It's time for your daily LSU baseball update with Musso at the box. Now, Matt Musso.
And welcome into another edition of Musso at the box, where we will sing a familiar refrain. LSU drops an SEC series, this time to Vanderbilt. They won game 1 10-6, lost game 2 in heartbreaking fashion 8-6, and then were run ruled in the series finale 13-3. LSU is 21-12 overall in the season and a just bitterly disappointing 3-9 in SEC play. We'll give some context to the 3-9, and it's historically bad context, but we'll talk about that. We'll go through parts of each game. Probably not much on Game 3 because there's really not much to say about Game 3. It was arguably LSU's worst performance of the year. If we're being honest, you just look at that game on the surface. Vanderbilt scored in all 8 innings. You didn't play a full 9. 7 of the 8 leadoff men reached base. More on that later. You were better with 2 outs, if you want to look at that. I mean, you only allowed 4 2-out runs, if you want some type of positivity there. That still wasn't good overall on the weekend, but hey, in that game, you only allowed 4 of the 13 runs to score with 2 outs. There's just not a lot to say about game number 3. You could pretty much see that one coming from a mile away, and it felt like the same bad dream, the same movie that you've seen over and over again. It felt eerily similar to the Florida weekend, and ultimately it played out just about the same way. You want to hit the panic button? Like, smash it. You can now. You can absolutely do that. There is no shame in that at the current moment, because where they are is a very dark place. Like when the polls come out on Monday, LSU should be unranked in all of them. I don't know how you look at them and say they're one of the 25 best teams in the country. One of the 25 most talented teams in the country? Absolutely, hands down. One of the 25 best? Not even close. And there's a couple reasons I say you can go ahead and hit that panic button now. And this is where we can get into the historic context, if you want, with the conference record. So all week long, took a part out of each day, started going back through schedules. Has LSU ever lost their first 4 conference weekends? I started out like, okay, there's certain years, obviously, I know they didn't, right? Like, clearly they didn't last year. 2013, absolutely not. They lost 7 conference games in the entirety of that season. 2009, obviously not. 2015, obviously not. Pick any year in the 90s, obviously not. So the way I started, I'm like, okay, let's go back to, years where they struggled. 2021, they lost their first 3. They won the 4th one. 2011, the last time they missed the SEC tournament, they lost their first 3. They won the 4th one. See what I'm getting at, y'all? I went back to before Skip Bertman was the coach. So we're talking pre-1984. Couldn't find it. And the further you go back, the weirder the schedule gets, where they'd go, to Tuscaloosa and play Alabama 2 games, and that was it, and it was only 1 day. They play a doubleheader. In the modern era, where they play 3-game conference weekends, I could not find a season where LSU lost their first 4. So now you have entered into a historically bad start to conference play if you're LSU. And that is bitterly disappointing. And that is absolutely cause for you to hit the panic button. 100%. Y'all, we talked about this stretch. How many times did we talk about this stretch? Whether it was in preseason, we talked about this stretch. Whether it was all throughout the pre-conference, we talked about this stretch. Highlighted it. You go on the road to Mississippi State. We said, okay, look, it's never easy to go to Starkville, but doesn't look like State's going to really take that big of a step forward. Clearly they have, and hats off to them. They're better than I think anybody thought they were going to be. But when we were going through this stretch, you looked at it and you said, okay, you should be able to get that one. And then you really enter into it, right? At home against Florida, at Arkansas, at home against Vandy, on the road at Tennessee. And oh, by the way, you still have to go on the road to Tennessee. But after we talked about State, and we're like, okay, you know what? You should be able to get that one. What did we say? Split. Win your home series and get one on the road. One game out of each series, not win that series. Can you split the series? Yeah, Florida's going to be tough, but man, you get it at home at the box. That should be an advantage. Vandy, obviously, going to be tough, but you get it at home. Could you just split and then not get swept on the road in the other two? That would have had you somewhere at about 8-7. And then you hit the back half of your schedule and see if you can make hay. And instead, you are 3-9, and this has been a complete disaster. There is no consistency in really anything that they've done, whether it be on the mound or at the plate or just in a general response. There has not been consistency. First time ever in the modern era of this schedule, you've lost your first 4 weekends. Yeah, I call that a total disaster. So that's one reason to go ahead and hit the panic button. Here's the other. And this is where I can inject a little bit of positivity, because I'm telling you, at some point, this team's going to heat up. They just are. It's baseball. It averages out. Like, at some point, they're going to hit their stride, and they're going to play their best baseball of the season. It's likely going to be at the back half of this schedule, because talent-wise, LSU's better than the majority of the teams on the back half of their schedule. But because you've lost your first 4 weekends, because you've gotten off to a 3-9 start, it's fair to ask right now, in early April, if when they do hit their stride, when they do play their best baseball, if it will be too late. That is a 100% fair question to ask. And that is concerning. Because if it is too late, LSU is going to miss the NCAA tournament for the first time in more than a decade. And that should never happen here. Ever. People always ask, what's the ceiling for LSU? Or what's a reasonable expectation for LSU? And ceiling, always Omaha. Actually, ceiling is always being the last team standing, because you're always going to have a lot of talent. And if you're talking ceiling, that's how far you can go in all the potential, right? Ceiling is that. Reasonable expectation should always at least be a super regional. Like, this program should always be 2 wins away from Omaha. The basement, not even the basement, 30 feet under the basement for your floor would be NCAA tournament. That should not even be an option that they don't make it. And that's honestly kind of what you have to start thinking about here. Because of the start you've gotten off to, and y'all, it's not going to go well in Knoxville probably. Like, that's probably not going to go well, if we're being honest. Pitching has been a big issue for this ball club, and that is a freaking high school field that you are about to go play on. The ball absolutely jumps out of there. You really needed to get this one against Vanderbilt, and you didn't. And you've dug a historic hole to where, yeah, I think it's fair now in April to ask when they hit their stride, is it going to be too late? And that is a position that I never thought this team would be in. And it's a position that this team never should be in. And there's a bunch of reasons why they are. And it's bitterly disappointing right now. They'll hit their stride. They'll play their best baseball. But if that doesn't start right now, it will be too late for this club. If you want to look a little bit at some of the games, Friday night, I mean, we recapped it, Thursday night, game one. Let's just start there real fast. They were really good. I mean, I thought Luke Holman pitched much better than his line indicated. He was all around the zone. I mean, just pounded it. Didn't walk anybody, punched out 10. That the fifth inning got a little hairy for him. He had a no-hitter for 4 1/3, gives up a flare to right, and then you give up another soft hit. You have two guys on, and then a routine pop-up carries out of the ballpark, and you have ultimately a 4 spot in that inning. But he pitched better. Then, of course, in the 6th, you have the error that extends that inning by Michael Braswell, and you end up giving two unearned runs there. Griffin Herring came in and slammed the door. What was impressive that night, LSU's offense really rose to the occasion early in that ball game, putting up 9 in the first 4 innings. Then you went into a shell against the bottom of the Vanderbilt bullpen, and you scratched across an insurance run in the 8th. It was a great at-bat by Jared Jones to do that, and you win that game 10-6. You come back the next night, you got Gage Jump on the mound for LSU, and Jump got off to a really nice start there through the first 2 innings. Zeros. You had a solo home run from Tommy White early in that ball game in the bottom of the first inning. You end up in a little bit of trouble there in the 3rd, and you give up the 2 spot. Classic spot for LSU there this year. I mean, you look at that inning. Leadoff double, so leadoff man reaches. Ground out, fly out. R.J. Austin hits a 2-run homer with 2 outs. How much did we focus on that coming into this week? Leadoff men on base and giving up runs with 2 outs, not being able to close out innings. And that's what happened there. Now, you credit the LSU offense. They attacked Bryson Cunningham. I almost said Brandon. Ashton Larson responds immediately. Homers in the bottom half, ties the game back up. Milam follows with an infield single, and then Tommy White would homer his 2nd of the game, and you're right back in front, 4-2. This is where you would need that, that shutdown frame, but instead it's a 2-out run, and they chip away, and LSU goes scoreless. And then in the 5th inning, it's it's a productive out by Vanderbilt, but they punch across another one, tie the game. LSU gets the lead back in the bottom of the 5th inning. Jared Jones, very mature at bat, singles up the middle. It was a breaking ball. It was a great AB by Jones. And LSU, you get the lead back right there. Make it 5-4. Top of the 6th. Vanderbilt scores another one. Another productive out. RBI ground out, just manufacturing the runs there. And then in the bottom of the 6th, And this is what got frustrating. In the bottom of the 6th inning, you have a double and a single. First and third, nobody out, and Steven Milam's at the plate. Michael Braswell's on third. He's not the fastest guy in the world, but he's not slow. Like, he's got good enough speed to get the job done here in what I'm about to propose. Steven Milam's probably I don't know if he's the best. He's one of the better bunters on the team. That is a perfect opportunity to squeeze. They didn't, and Milam struck out swinging on 3 pitches. Now, it gets swept under the rug a little bit because Mac Bingham has an RBI ground out and gives LSU the lead once more. So at that point, you're looking at 6-5. So, all right, can you hold on for 9 outs? The answer would be no. LSU would give up a 2-run homer in the 8th with 2 outs and give Vanderbilt a 7-6 lead. Fast forward to the bottom of the 8th. Braswell draws a 1-out walk. Larson singles to the pitcher, and there's a throwing error on the play. So you end up with runners at first and third, less than 2 outs. Same situation as the 6th with Milam up. Perfect chance for a squeeze bunt just to try and push across the tying run. If you don't get it, okay. They let Milam swing away. He smokes a baseball, but it's a double play. If you didn't want to bunt because you didn't want to risk having a runner thrown out at the plate, fine. Start the runner at first base. You have to do something there from a strategical standpoint, in my opinion, to eliminate the double play possibility. In the bottom of the 8th, when you have struggled as much as you have against opponents' bullpens, and at that point, you're facing the top half of Vanderbilt's bullpen, which we went through relentlessly. To just not do anything was very disappointing, in my opinion, there. You start Larson, you stay out of the double play, and the run scores there. You squeeze bunt, who knows? Maybe you get thrown out at the plate. Maybe you score a run. You just let him swing away, and you ground into a double play, and that ends the ballgame. LSU would then give up another run with 2 outs. In the top of the 9th to add insurance, and in the bottom of the 9th, after Bingham singles to right center, you had just 2 of the more disappointing at-bats from Tommy White and Jared Jones that you'll ever see. Jay Johnson has talked about the frustration of 1-pitch outs till he's been blue in the face just about this year, and that's exactly what you got from Tommy White with a runner on first base. First pitch swinging, pop up to center field, and then Jared Jones watched not 1, not 2, but 3 fastballs, didn't swing, and went down on 3 pitches. I was flabbergasted by that. Milazzo would strike out swinging, and you wouldn't lose the ballgame. So I go through all of that to say this. When I look at Saturday, the offense was not without flaw. That's for sure. It was a typical offensive game for LSU. They did very well against the starting pitcher. They struggled against the bullpen. That's what they've done. We talked about that on the preview. We talked about that after Thursday night. In the preview, we said, look, Vandy's got a really good top half of the bullpen, but they're not deep. Can you knock these starters out early and get into there and maybe force them to have to use some pitchers that they haven't normally relied on a lot in this year? Thursday, you did that. Still didn't hit them. So they weren't without flaw. But they had 6 runs on 10 hits and gave the pitching staff 1, 2, 3, 4 different leads that they could not hold. So, yeah, the offense has been inconsistent. But I'll take this time to reiterate something we talked about before this weekend. when we tried to diagnose LSU's biggest issue. And I said it's real easy to point to the offense because you have to score runs to win games. But I told y'all I thought the biggest issue for LSU's pitching, the biggest issue for LSU was the pitching. And Saturday's a perfect example of that. What we thought this staff was going to be, what they're capable of being because of the talent that they haven't been anywhere close to it since this weekend against Xavier. And there's a variety of different reasons. One of the things I will tell you that I think has been the most disappointing about this pitching staff for LSU is the returners that you have from last year's team that were major contributors on last year's team just have not been up to the standard. Griffin Herring has been awesome. He is the exception. It has been a struggle for Nate Ackenhausen, who was one of your more trusted relievers last year, came up with arguably the biggest pitching performance for you last year, has been through the wars in junior college and the SEC and LSU, and he has an ERA approaching 7 and has given up the most home runs on your team. I'm not trying to just single out Nate Ackenhausen. I'm just using that as an example because, I mean, it's been a struggle for Gavin Guidry at times this year. It's been a big struggle for Thatcher Hurd this year. Thatcher Hurd, you don't win the national championship without him last season. He was huge down the stretch. Through 6 innings, got the win in the national championship game. But he has an ERA north of 6. Like, those are the leaders you really needed so far early in this stretch on your staff, and you just haven't got it. You had enough returning there. Just hasn't been good enough. That's been a big issue. But just overall, this staff, we'll go back to it when talking about the biggest issue. Leadoff runners, 2 out runs. You were better in the leadoff runner category this weekend. Kind of. Saturday skewed it. I do want to give that disclaimer. Saturday skewed it. But over 40% of the leadoff men reached this series. 12 out of 26. You allowed 27 runs. 14 of them, so more than half, came with 2 outs. And you're just not going to win many series that way. I don't care what the offense is doing. I mean, you have to get outings like you got Thursday night from the offense every time out for that stat not to matter. Because, by the way, Thursday night, 5 of the 6 Vanderbilt runs scored with 2 outs. But you scored 10 runs. It didn't matter. But this offense is not consistent enough right now to do that game in and game out. LSU's got to work in tandem more. And they haven't been able to do that. And that's where I go back to talking about some of the returners on the mound that haven't necessarily haven't done enough. You could sit here, you can complain, and you could talk about coaching and whatnot. But at some point, the onus has to fall onto the guys. At some point, some of the onus has to. So that's, again, why I bring that up. Because, I mean, I think that's obviously one reason you felt so good about LSU's pitching staff this year. Like, take the transfer portal additions out of the equation right now. That's one of the reasons you felt so good, because you had guys returning that pitched really big innings for you and you thought would play a major role that just haven't up to this point. That's the cold, hard truth. So LSU has got to get better closing out innings, and they've got to get better starting the inning. And until they do that, this pitching staff is going to have a lot of problems. They're more than talented enough. I know everybody wants to choke Nate Yeskie out right now. He is more than capable of getting this thing on the right track. The guy has been a part of multiple national championship teams as a pitching coach. He has been the National Assistant of the Year. Like, he knows what he's doing. I like to try to put some type of positive spin every show. It's been real hard this weekend outside of Thursday. But what I will say is I thought the offense Thursday and Friday really took some strides. The offense looked like, okay, you get a little bit more of that can be good. I think Ashton Larson really showed himself well this weekend. Had 3 hits on Friday night, had another hit on Saturday. Let's see what you got there a little bit, man. Like, kid's got a really bright future. Let's see if you can't make some of that future right now. I was very impressed with the single he had against Carter Holton on Saturday. It's left on left, tough matchup there. Like, the at-bats you've seen from him the previous 2 weekends have been really good, whether it was that pinch hit against Fouch from Arkansas where he flares the sac fly, to tie a game up for LSU, or the 2-run homer he had in Game 3 against Arkansas, and what he did this weekend. Like, let's see what you got there a little bit, man. I mean, look, I think Josh Pearson has been very good, and if you want Pearson in the lineup, you can easily play Larson and Pearson on the corners and play Bingham in center like you did Friday night. But I want to see more of Ashton Larson. I feel like that's a familiar refrain that we've mentioned plenty here on this show so far early in the season. I'd like to see more. If you can do that. I thought Jared Jones, outside of that at bat in the 9th inning on Friday, turned in some really good plate appearances and really showed a knack for some situational hitting, which is good. Not trying to do too much. Like the 8th inning on Thursday night, didn't try to do too much in that situation, just hit an absolute rocket to center field, and it ends up getting under the center fielder's glove. Same thing Friday night. A breaking ball, lines it up the middle, beats the shift, like to the right of second base, and scores another run that way. Like, that's progress. That's good. When I look on the mound, I mean, Holman and Herring continued to dominate. That's a promising thing. One thing I'll say about Gage Jump that I loved, he didn't walk anybody. It's the first outing of the year, I believe. Maybe that 9th inning he pitched on opening day. Maybe the 9th inning he pitched on opening day, he didn't walk anybody. I could check that actually real quick here, if you'll bear with me for a moment. Let's see. He didn't walk anybody that night. So that is a huge positive. I do believe. He battled hard and got you length. You just need him to be able to throw up a few more zeros. Which, again, I think will come. But I take that. I take the improved command from him, or I should say the improved control, as a major positive. As a major positive going forward. They just have to keep plugging away. But they've dug a really deep hole. And it is fair to hit the panic button. It is fair to ask, will it be too late when they do hit their stride? They got another tough one coming, y'all, against Tennessee. That's going to be really hard to play 3 games against that club on the road in a rowdy environment, and you know they're going to be out for some revenge. You beat them 4 times last year and ended their season. And they have a chance to bury you. There's going to be plenty of motivation in the orange and white dugout on the other side of the field. LSU needs to show up and fight. So, tough weekend. Tigers are 21-12, 3-9 in the league. First time in the modern era that they've lost 4 straight SEC series to open up conference play. They will be back at it Tuesday night against McNeese. Y'all smash the like button on your way out. Share. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Subscribe up on your favorite podcast app. Stick with us, y'all. We got you covered wall to wall through thick and thin here on Musso at the Box. Be here next time.